very much, I just want to take on your point about leadership and also the collaborative approach. I wonder what your view is regarding the status quo. That is that we have within the UN a number of organizations who have nutrition as a major part of their work. We have WHO, we have UNICEF, we have WFP, and so on, FAO. Yet these groups themselves have not shown us the leadership of coming together and actually working together and having a common platform for pushing for nutrition. And there's a lot of discussion going on in territories and so on and so forth. I wonder how we can leverage these organizations to actually work more closely together so that we can help them to actually advance the common cause that we're talking about.
Okay, would you like me to do it one by one?
Maybe we take the second question and answer both. There was another question.
My name is Catherine Hagan. I'm with a program in Geneva called the Global Social Observatory. And we have the honor of launching a consultation process to address conflict of interest in the scaling up nutrition movement. It has been a very informative session today with the different presentations on new information and insights on scaling up nutrition and the different sensitive issues and ways of linking them to other development strategies. And we are very interested in supporting all of this within the context of a better understanding of how to build trust among the different partners. One of the issues that I sense from the presentation that you made and also the preceding one, which I thought was excellent, had to do with where to create a space for empowerment that engages the local communities effectively in the whole range of nutritious foods that are needed in order to deal with this issue. And in particular, the complementary foods. And I would like some more comments on how the connection can be made between local sustainable agriculture and then also more broadly the complementary foods and what you can do with engaging the private sector, especially small and medium enterprises in local communities, to participate more aggressively in targeted complementary foods that connect as well to the more natural sustainable agriculture issues that are being looked at with regard to things like the sweet potato. But I mean, it seems to me there needs to be more than just that with regard to addressing the range of complementary food needs in an effective way.
Okay. Two easy questions, thank you. Politically loaded, not. UN, I'm not going to... I mean, I think the different UN agencies, not just because they're sitting in the room, I think the different UN agencies have shown a lot of leadership on nutrition over the last 5 years. I think they did before 2008, but I think they've really stepped it up in the last 5 years. Certainly at the global level. I think where you do find bickering and competition and lack of coordination is at some country level. It's variable. Some countries it's working really well, and some other countries it's not working terribly well. But this is nothing unique to the UN. I mean, the different bilateral donor agencies don't do it terribly well either in some places, and dare I say it, research institutes don't do it terribly well in some places as well. So I think it's a challenge for everyone to work better. What can you do to incentivize it better? Personally, I'd like to see more donor funding, make that a conditionality, that there are a lot more joint programs and joint activities. I know AusAid is doing this, I think, with UNICEF and WFP, saying we're only going to give you money if you show us that you're properly working together, not just coming together to get the money and then going off and doing your own thing, but doing stuff jointly together on the ground with clearly defined roles and clearly defined complementarities. And I would like donors to do more of that. And and David will, I think the UN system has been really good at feeding into the scaling up nutrition movement as well. On the conflict of interest issue, it's a really difficult one. We really tried hard to find evidence about this 7 to 24 month period is a really, you get the sense that it's a really problematic one because the risks of the private sector entering that space improperly are very high. But you also get the sense that the risks of us foregoing a proper intervention are also really high. So how do you balance those two risks? Because I've seen cost of diet studies from WFP, Save the Children, a bunch of people that say it's really hard for low-income households to get all the nutrients required into the diet for kids between 7 and 24 to complement breastfeeding, which of course is still hopefully going on. So you do need some kind of formulated processed food, but it's a very difficult space, and I think we can only hope for a really honest discussion. It's such an ideological and polarized debate. I think it's a tragedy, actually. And I think we need to get more facts in, and I come back to the impact evaluations and the descriptions of what's happening. It's understandable there's such a high distrust because there's a very troubled, we say in the paper, there's a very troubled history of the private sector in nutrition, especially breast milk substitute manufacturers, but also other parts of the food industry. And if you read the Save the Children reports, there's still evidence of ongoing violations. So it's a very tricky one, and we don't really have a good answer other than be open, transparent, honest. What does the evidence say? Bring people together to talk and dialogue. But I think the apartheid that's happening right now is not helpful, personally.
There was one there that
Yeah, Francesco Brandt, this is really a comment in response to your comment. I'm not only working for WHO, I'm also one of the two facilitators of the UN network for SAM. And I can tell you that we've been doing much more in the last few years, as Lawrence was saying. We now have a policy harmonization role at the global level with the Standing Committee on Nutrition, hosted in WHO. But also we have a REACH partnership bringing together the different agencies and providing that support to 12 countries, and it's probably expanding. We've been speaking more and more with one voice, and you see the same numbers, the same policy messages. We've been doing a lot of joint programming through, for example, the Spanish Millennium Development Goal Fund. And I think we've been also bringing nutrition to global governance forum, World Health Assembly, which you saw was very much discussed in the context of the Lancet as well, and the Committee of Food Security. We have been lucky to have a senior principal of our organization, Ms. Anthony Kusen, representing the whole UN system in the context of the Sunday Group, and actually Tony Day chairing the Sunday Group. So we've also managed somehow to go beyond the technical level and to bring this good cohesion at the political level. But you can always do better, and I think we have, like all the other groups in SAM, for example, accepted, be very happy actually to be monitored and evaluated, so it will be a baseline, so actually with a good accountability system we'll actually be able to count and demonstrate how we can improve our cohesion and working together.
Thank you. There's 3 questions at large. There's a lady in the back, Ms. Majid, and okay, nobody in the front. But maybe if you could just keep your questions concise. There'll be discussion.
And answers, right?
Yes,
concise.
And
I'll try.
I'm Preeti Davesen. I'm with SIP, the Children's Investment Fund Foundation. Lawrence, you mentioned the nutrition mission in Maharashtra, and I'm keen to know how much you think that has been responsible for the kinds of things you've been talking about, the political focus, additional resourcing, some of the interdepartmental sort of nutrition sensitive interventions. Has it facilitated those kinds of dimension?
Okay. My short answer is I don't know all the details. We're currently doing a 6-month study with UNICEF on what happened in Maharashtra. We see a very rapid decline in stunting. The box in the paper gives some sort of impressionistic headlines from second-hand reports that we've gotten for people essentially speculating about what happened. Because we know there's been growth in Maharashtra, some economic growth. We think it's a bit more broad-based than some other areas. We think the status of women is a bit better in that state than in some other states. But the big game changer, we think, is the mission and the evidence base around the pilots that have been scaled up. It's not a terribly satisfactory answer, but in 6 months we'll be able to give you a much better answer. But the bigger point is we don't do enough research on the success stories because they don't lend themselves to standard randomized controlled trials, and how do you establish a counterfactual? So it's about qualitative work, it's about political work, it's about credible storytelling that's triangulated from a number of different sources, and that form of evidence is not terribly popular in the nutrition community.
So more a comment than a question. So I guess speaking of Lancet silos of different series, the NCD series actually took a much harsher role in terms of industry.
Yes.
I mean, the paper that David Stuckler and his colleagues led,
yes.
I mean, basically just said, they shouldn't be at the table, there shouldn't be a dialogue, we should regulate them. And there were very good reasons. I mean, I was at the review meetings of that series. There were very good reasons for sort of putting the food industry to get much closer to tobacco and alcohol than farther away from them. And I think without taking a position on, have a dialogue, learn it or not, I mean, I would say that we do need as a sort of a, global health, both research and policy sort of, analytic community to come to a position of what do we want to do with industry. I mean, I think good arguments can be made. I mean, you said that they are a part of the market, they provide it, and again, the other side of it could be that, look, they just don't belong at the table, until they are told what the regulations are, and that's something that should actually get to somewhat of a more commonplace in dealing with child maternal nutrition, in pharmaceutical for that matter, and NCDs altogether.
Yes, I read that paper with great interest. That was a really interesting paper. I've presented essentially on the undernutrition side, and I think for the, if you want to call it the overnutrition side, for particular companies, it's pretty clear that what they're doing is pretty damaging to health in the pursuit of profit. I still think that we can't formulate a position on that on our own. I think we have to engage with them and then make our own decision about where we want to be. I think it's also pretty difficult. It's going to be pretty difficult to come to an overall consensus. But it is kind of the elephant in the room, and we are usually kind of afraid of talking about it in a serious way. I liked that paper, but I did think it was, I wasn't so certain about the systematic nature of the evidence base produced. Even though it was in the Lancet. I'm a big fan of ATMI, the Access to Nutrition Index, which ranks large multinationals in terms of their ability to improve nutrition. We've got to get serious about it seems to me.
When a group of people can take a set of complex issues and present them back to those who are swimming in that sea all the time in a way that is both enlightening and also to an extent reassuring, that's a great thing. Enlightening because you're showing new paths, and reassuring because, at least to myself and I think many of my colleagues, you help us not to feel as stupid as we sometimes do feel, because of course many of the issues we are involved in are immensely contradictory and paradoxical. We do think that there is a need to introduce a new sector, as well as the public sector and the private sector. It's the real life sector. It's what actually happens in the domain of people's immediate personal environments. We heard from Maria a bit about how really objectionable some of those environments can be, particularly if you're a powerless person or a low power person. Your notion of crowding in is of course what we've tried to do in the Sun movement. That was the whole idea. But the more the crowd comes into the big tent, the more we realise some kind of structure is needed, and many people tell us that that needs to be institutionalised. But sometimes I fear that serious attempts to institutionalise and structure a crowd immediately creates problems that lead you to regret some of the decisions you made. We're right at the cusp in the Sun movement of that kind of indecision. And lastly, this elephant in the room. I mean, you have a choice, don't you? You either pretend the elephant isn't there, or you try to shoot all the elephants, or you try to put them in a big kind of hermetically sealed box, or you live with them and perhaps even you ride on them. And these choices are available.
Hope someone's tweeting this.
They're available. But I mean, we have to be, I don't mind. People have made, I think, a lot of remarks about how terrible it is that there is space for business inside the Sun movement. But that was a conscious choice after reading work by yourselves and others, stimulated by many people, Ban Ki-moon and others. The feeling was it would be absurd not to make that space. But I just wanted to say, I mean, we'll obviously go on about it, and many people will talk about it, but your plea for rigorous research in that area is really well taken. Thank you.
Thank you, David. It's pretty pitiful, the amount of research that's out there.
Yeah,
So
there's none.
space is none, really.
Well, people are scared, so...
Yeah, I know. It's really cowardly, I think, of us as a community not to do that. We need to just just do it. On Sun, my 2 cents is, I think once you start institutionalising it, you'll kill it.
Yeah.
So I would resist every attempt to do it.
Oh, thank
You don't need my advice, but that's my 2 cents.